Good morning, everyone. Just want to welcome you here today and invite you to come on in. If you're in the foyer, come find a seat. And actually, you can stay standing. I'll invite everybody to stand. And we're just going to spend some time worshiping in song together. In the morning when Let all that I am wait quietly before God, for my hope is in him. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my fortress where I will not be shaken. My victory and honor come from God alone. He is my refuge, a rock where no enemy can reach me. O my people, trust in him at all times. Pour out your heart to him, for God is our refuge. We are waiting, we are trusting, we are longing for your blessings, Lord. And our faith is firmly anchored on your never-changing word. Spirit, fall down, fill our souls now. Lord, we gather in your name, your power, all your promises we claim. Together bind us with grace, the body of Christ. All for your presence we wait. We are waiting, we are trusting, we are longing, Lord, descend. Let a flame of love be kindled, while before your throne we bend. Spirit, fall down, fill our souls now. Lord, we gather in your name, your power, all your promises we claim. Together bind us with grace, the body of Christ. All for your presence we wait. We are waiting, we are trusting, we are longing, Lord, revive. Death is fading, hope is rising, in your spirit we're alive. Lord, we gather in your name, your power, all your promises we claim. Together bind us with grace, the body of Christ. All for your presence we wait. All for your presence we wait. All for your presence we wait. God, we thank you for promising to always be with us, and we are just ready to meet with you here today. Amen. You can be seated.
Well, good morning. Welcome here, as you've been welcomed already. Glad that you can join us and we can worship together, we can learn together, and just experience this morning together. I have 3 announcements that I want to go over, and then we'll carry on. So the first of them is from Ken Phrase. And when I got his text this morning, I read it thinking, oh, you want to come do an announcement? And I was reading it again and not seeing him here. I was like, oh, he wants me to read an announcement. So it's all here, though. But it's regarding Canada Day. So he says, thank you to all the volunteers for Canada Day breakfast making. Ken Phrase will be contacting you this week still in need of some volunteers to boil the sausages during the week. So please contact Ken if this is something you could do. So that's for those of you that know who you are, that you're helping with Canada Day already, thank you. And for those that want to jump in and help midweek, there's a task there that you could grab as well. The next one is regarding VBS. Again, I thought someone was going to come up here and read this, and then I was given a piece of paper, and so I'm going to read it to you as well. VBS announcement. If you'd like to help by lending or donating items for VBS, take a look at the board by the north entrance. Did most of you see that? Kind of that came in that way already? You can take home the reminder tag on the right side of the item you'd like to donate. And also, second point, we need 8 kids to ride on the VBS float. It's the train sort of thing that you've been on before at Canada Day. So let Julia Isaac know if you are interested, and that's coming up quick. It's this Saturday morning on July 1st. So get in touch with Julia as quick as you can. If as a kid you want to hop in there, or as a parent you want to hop your kid in there and to help out with that float. Last thing for announcements is in a little bit, we're going to have the kids' story up here, and we want you to participate in that in coming Sundays. So on the table that looks like this, that is just back there, there's a sign-up sheet for the Sundays through the summer. There's a pen there probably as well, unless someone grabbed it. And you can write your name on one of those slots. You can write your name on a bunch of those slots if you want to read the kids' story through the summer. You can pick more than one. I don't think there's like a huge age limit, like as long as you can read well. So maybe for those of you in kind of like junior high-ish, if you know about reading and you want to do that sort of thing, you could help with that too. So let's fill that up, and then that will just manage that. You know when you are, and everyone else knows when you are, and the book will be kept kind of back by the sound booth there, and you can help us out with those on our Sunday mornings through the summer. All right, so that brings us to that children's feature, and so I'm going to invite Julie up, and I'd say any kids, if you want to come to this front row so you can actually see the pictures as we continue on the story.
Okay, kids of any ages, come on up. So we've been reading this story called Little Pilgrim's Big Journey. It's a kid's version of the Pilgrim's Progress, for those of you adults who that may sound familiar to. The first chapter was read 2 weeks ago, so it's been a while. So do you remember what the little boy's name was? Christian, yes, yeah. So it's about a boy named Christian. He's about to leave the city of destruction, and he's starting a journey to the celestial city. Do you know what that means? Do you know what another name is for the celestial city? Any big kids? Yeah, Riley? Heaven, yeah. Yeah, so this story is just kind of a story, but it's kind of like what life is like for us. And so the book in Christian's hand represents the Bible. And then he has a burden on his back, and that talks about, it's kind of represents the sin in our lives. So chapter 2 is called The Bog of Despond. And Alyssa's going to hold the book for me, and I'm going to read it. Okay. As they kept walking, Christian told Pliable about the celestial city. There will be no sadness there, no more sickness, and no more pain. The king will wipe all tears from our eyes. Everyone will be happy forever. Please tell me more, Pliable begged. The king of that city is not like ordinary kings, Christian explained. His love for little pilgrims is so great that he's preparing mansions for us. He'll place crowns on our heads and give us shining clothes to wear. Wow, said Pliable, but how do you know this is true? Because the king wrote it in my book, Christian answered. Pliable was amazed. Why would the king give us all that for free? All the king wants, Christian said, is for us to believe him and follow him and love him with our whole hearts. He wants to fill his city with pilgrims from all over the world so they can know his goodness and enjoy him forever. They were so absorbed in their conversation that they slipped and began sinking into a muddy pit called the Bog of Despond. The more they tried to get out, the deeper they sank. Pliable screamed, "So this is the happy place you told me about? I don't believe your king is very good at all. You can go to the celestial city by yourself." Pliable struggled out of the mud and left Christian alone. Christian sank deeper and deeper into the bog because of his big burden. Just as Christian's head sank under the mud, a strong hand reached down and pulled him out. "My name is Help," the man said. "The king sent me here to rescue any pilgrims who fall into this bog." "Why hasn't the king filled in this bog with dirt?" Christian asked. "It can't be filled," said the man. "Many have tried to mend it, and though the king put in steps, many pilgrims don't look for them. But have no fear. The king is always with you, and he'll send help when you need it most." Christian continued alone, thinking about his family and everything he left behind. Then he met an older boy named Worldly, who laughed at him. "Why are you carrying such a large load on your back? You look ridiculous." Christian said, "A kind man named Evangelist told me to follow the light to where this burden can be removed. He said it can be lifted off only there." "You've listened to bad advice," Worldly said. "Evangelist is always leading people astray. The road he's sending you on is filled with dangers. You'll meet lions, robbers, and dragons. You'll be hungry the whole way, and you'll probably die." Christian sighed. "I just want to get rid of this burden." Worldly told him, "Then why endure all those dangers? I know where you can easily be freed from your burden. It's a little town called Morality. You can invite your family and live a long and happy life there." Worldly pointed. "It's just over that hill. You'll meet a man named Legality. He'll help you take off that burden." Christian believed Worldly and began in that direction, but the journey was not as pleasant as Worldly promised. As he came over, the hill grew bigger and bigger. Christian called out, "Hello, Legality, are you there?" All he heard was a loud boom that thundered above him. The hill grew into a mountain and began toppling over his head. Fire and brimstone flew out from it. Christian was terrified. Just as Christian lost all hope, Evangelist came to rescue him. As they moved away from the mountain, Evangelist asked, "How did you stray so far from the path? Why did you ignore my instruction?" Christian felt so ashamed. "Worldly told me that I could remove my burden here, and I believed him. I'm so sorry." Then Evangelist said, "There are no shortcuts to the celestial city. There's only one way to remove your burden. Many people may try to lead you astray, but you must stay on the path and enter through the narrow gate." Christian rushed back to the path. He was so relieved when at last he saw the narrow gate. As he came near, he read a sign over the gate that said, "Knock, and it shall be opened." And that's the end of chapter 2. Come back next week for more.
So I've always had this, not always. I have this thought that there's certain things that would be neat to do. I'm sure some of you have these thoughts as well, that you think it would be great to be good at certain things, or there's dreams that you want to achieve towards. And so one of the things that I've seen before that I think, man, that'd be pretty cool to be good at, because it's always a fun environment, is those that kind of facilitate the late night talk show hosts. So kind of the David Lettermans and the James Gordons and who's that one guy, Fallon. Those, I love how well they do at interviewing people. That's something I would love to do well. I'd love to get better at. But I know that's not probably my avenue at this point, but I thought, hey, as long as we have opportunity to talk to people about things, maybe I can pretend for a little while. And so in the vein of that, combined with the fact that we have a grad season upon us, and we have one of those graduates here, I would like to introduce my next guest, McLean Jansen. If you want to, you guys have to clap. There we go, yeah. I'll give you that. And I think we need to do just one more thing, though, out of, because we're celebrating that, just before we sit down, we're celebrating that you're done school, that you've made it through all of those years of school. You've been part of youth for a number of years as well, and so it's kind of this at the end sort of thing we're celebrating. And I'm actually, without them even knowing, I'm going to invite one more person up who's kind of at the end of his time too. And so I'm going to invite up Mr. Colin Penner to come on up as well. You got to bring your own chair though. So all right, well let's make space for him to join us here too, and we'll we could bring some of these over and put you between a couple ferns if that would be beneficial. So you don't have any questions, but I figured we would maybe pull your wisdom as well, and if nothing else, it maybe makes it a bit easier for McLean to be up here sharing too. So this is where we are. So as a way of introduction, just to kind of give us who we are, where we are. Some people know you, not everyone does. And so if you can kind of give us your name, and again, I always do this. I don't know if it matters to anyone but me, but who your parents are, because that's a landmark for some people as well too. And maybe what's something you enjoy.
I'm McLean Jansen. I've grown up in Elm Creek all my life, same house. My dad is Tim Jansen. My mom's Tara Jansen. They're actually not here right now. I enjoy cars a lot. I like to fix cars.
Well, tell us about the one car you have been fixing. Some people will appreciate these details, so you can be specific.
Okay, so I bought a 1992 Volvo 240, and it has a Fox body Mustang 5-liter engine in it, and it's pretty fun.
Just maybe before you give the mic to Colin so he can introduce himself. Maybe this is easier because your parents aren't here, and we kind of know who they are a bit too. But what's something you appreciate about your parents?
I like that they've, from like when I was like super little, they've always brought me to church, and like I've grown up in a Christian home, so that's like the best thing that could have ever happened, and I really appreciate that.
Awesome. Kate, why don't you pass the mic to that guy, and he can offer some introductions and what cars he's working on these days too then.
Hi, I'm Colin Penner. I live that way. Yeah, that's my family there. My folks aren't here either this morning. I don't work on cars, but I enjoy old trucks. So right now I've got a 33 Ford where I'm redoing the rad, and I've got a 53 Ford on a 2003 Ford ambulance chassis. So those are long-time projects, yeah.
Right on. All right, thank you for the introductions. So McLean, back to you. You're graduating, and usually that means you're going to do something different than high school. So what's next for you?
Okay, so I was applying around at Bible schools around basically the world, and so it was either BC, where my brother went, or Austria, where nobody's been in my family or anything. So I finished my application for Austria, and then I got accepted within a week, and so I'm going to Austria.
Right on. And that's part of a Cape and Ray school in Austria, is that correct?
Yeah, it's part of Cape and Ray.
All right. Do you know anything about what the school's going to be like, or you just kind of will get to Austria and see what happens?
Well, it's in the middle of the Alps, so there's going to be a lot of skiing, and it's not a very big school, so there's going to be like 20, 25 students, I'm assuming.
Right on. Well, that presents a great dynamic of getting to know people in a closer sense then, too. Very cool. Another one for you, McLean, then. So you've been attending youth for 6 years. At least, and then you were helping with Doc 68 this past year as well as a leader, so that gives you a bonus year, so we'll call it 7 then if we're keeping track. And do you have any highlights or stories that you could share with us over any of those?
The one time we went to Winnipeg Harvest, or I think it's called Harvest Manitoba now, but we were going to the McDonald's, and then we left Alex Bourgeois there.
Not for long.
It wasn't just funny because it was him. It would have been funny if it was anybody, but it was more funny that it was him.
And then we went and got him, right? We didn't get that far away.
I mean...
It's true, this did happen. Any other? I love how that's the highlight for like 7 years.
There's probably way more. That's just the one that came out.
We're doing good things here, part of our student ministry.
The events are fun.
Nice. Colin, any ones that stand out? You've been doing youth here again. Kind of a circle of life sort of thing that's fascinating for me as well is that McLean's parents were at one point your youth leaders to a certain extent too, right?
Yeah, they were Sunday school teachers and youth leaders, and yeah.
Pretty cool. Kind of comes around in some ways like that.
Yeah, it's neat. I mean, I'm trying to think how many years I've been a youth leader. 8, 9 years, something like that. It's been a while. We've done some crazy things. Were you around when we did bow and arrow tag in the church? Like full-on bows and shooting arrows at each other in here.
Again, the arrows have big soft things on the end of them. You guys leave out important details.
Yeah, I guess that's important. So that was a lot of fun. Youth retreats, Pembina Valley or Valley View, or even just grad trips where like last year we went for a hike in the Pembina Valley and we got like 50 wood ticks. Just those memories, that's fun.
It's a deal breaker for some. I have this one specific memory as it pertains to you, actually, McLean. When we did a youth retreat at Cedarwood, and you would have been in grade 9. We have pictures of it. You've grown up. You're not that little grade 9 kid anymore. That's for sure. And I remember at one point you and I were talking, and maybe we were talking a little more of a serious matters at the time, and you said to me, I don't know if you remember this. You said to me that I just want to be a little more dedicated with my relationship with God. I don't know if those are your exact words, but then what you got to is saying I want to, and now I can't remember if it was 45 minutes or an hour. I'm just going to shoot. I want to be able to, my goal is to sit down to read the Bible and pray for 45 minutes or an hour a day. That's my goal. And this is McLean in grade 9. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, are you kidding me? Like, do you want to start with 15 minutes? Like, start something, but just shoots for that straight off the top, and in all seriousness as well, which I thought it just blew me away. It wasn't at all what I was expecting, and then I was supposed to follow up with you, which I probably never did, unfortunately. So how's that been going for you?
So I haven't quite got 45 minutes a day, but it's pretty close. It's like
Nice.
25.
Well, good for you though. But setting those targets like that is fantastic. And that's, for me, it was a challenge and inspiration. And I think for others to hear that too, like to target something like that was awesome. So I just think that's always been a picture of your character from early on in that way as well. Kind of jumping off that though, what have you learned? Is there something through thinking youth-wise, now we talked about some of the events things, are there any sort of biblical principles or anything that you've kind of picked up along the way? I know that's a tough one because it just becomes all a bit of a blur, and after a while it's continuous. But was there anything that stood out for you?
So Ephesians stood out to me throughout the whole thing. I have it in my testimony and stuff too. The armor of God is just super important to me, and basically it's just a kind of a stool to stand on when you're going through life. And on another note, the youth events they never get old.
Well, you're well invested in Doc 68, so when you come back from Austria, you can keep coming to youth events if you want. So, and as I found out, if you keep coming, eventually they just pay you to do it, and you keep going, and it's good. So there's a route as well if you're thinking of one day. This one I'm gonna ask for you, McLean, and then also for you, Colin, which I realize is off the top. So if you don't have anything, that's fine. But what are you currently learning? What do you think God is teaching you at this moment? What's happening for you right now?
The biggest word that comes to my mind is resilience, because I hang out with a lot of people that are not very good people, and in a lot of places too, my classmates and stuff, and my coworkers, they're not Christians, and they do not act like Christians, and it's hard to just keep going. And what I've been trying to learn is just resilience and keeping my morals and stuff, and all that.
That's fantastic. Good for you to recognize that and to lean into it, and that takes a lot of work, and at least God's on your side with it. Colin, anything that you would venture to share?
Well, I've been reading through the first chunk of the Bible, which is a lot of rules and laws, and it kind of drags on, but it's good. But what I'm learning about that is, and as a parent, I'm God sets out rules for us, and he set rules out for the Israelites, and then they'd go mess up, and then he'd have to make up like rules around it. Like, I said this, but I mean this. And so as a parent, sometimes I get frustrated with my kids when I give them a rule, and then I have to give them rules around rules. But I see God as that parent, that he really cares for us, and he says, I want what's best for you guys. And this is how to live the best way, but if you're not going to live like this, then there's these other rules that'll kind of help steer you back towards that. And that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Right on. Thanks for sharing. Off the cuff as well. I appreciate that. Okay, we're getting near the end here. So this is then for, actually, I don't know if either of you want to address this one, but or both. What youth group habit or small town Elm Creeky type thing do you think you are going to spread wherever you go? Like, maybe you don't even have awareness that you do this thing because you're from Elm Creek or you grew up in this town, but do you think there's things where you're going to be like, this is what we do, and Austria needs to know?
This is more of a Manitoba thing, but honey dill sauce.
Nice.
Farmer sausage.
See what sort of and see what you bring back as well. Maybe you'll help the collective pot here as well. Did you find anything, Colin, as you graduated and went on? Were there things you were like, oh, that's just an us thing. That's not a.
Yeah, there's little things like that. I think the biggest thing that I'm taking away from youth is just the willingness to jump in and do something silly and not really worry about what people think. If we were to have us adults say, like, okay, today we're going to play Giant Dutch Blitz, it's probably not going to get as wild as with youth because we're willing to kind of go out of our way and be a little bit silly. So, and I appreciate that willingness to get involved and just ask questions that are maybe seem silly, but they are good questions because they make us think about why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah, that's a good point too. The question thing of like especially when it comes to faith, it can be pretty easy to think like, well, everyone else knows this one. I can't ask that, and so we need to kind of put that part of our brain aside as adults as well, and be like, no, I got to ask that question because someone else is probably wondering it as well. Okay, last one then, both of you guys for this one. How can we be praying for you? And I say this a little bit more as a challenge for us as a church, for McLean, as he's away when someone's not in your line of sight all the time. It can be easy to sort of forget, but let's be mindful of McLean as he's off in Austria, and we can be supporting you in prayer. And but yeah, what sort of things can we be praying for you?
Basically, the anxiety factor of traveling alone and just being there with only one other person from Manitoba, and like making new friends and having a new friend group and stuff. And
yeah, that's fair. That's a lot of new and a lot of good come out of that too. So appreciate that. Let's do this. Colin, do you want to pray for you and I? Let's pray for McLean, and then we'll quit pestering you.
God, thank you for McLean. Thank you for the man he is and the man he's becoming. And thank you that he's striving towards you and he's got you on his heart. And Lord, I ask that you be with him and stay with him as he heads to Austria this year. Help him to continue to learn and just to not learn, but take us to heart and just grow in relationship with you. And help him to have a lot of fun, maybe do some silly things, and to get out of his comfort zone. And help him to just make lifelong friendships and memories that will forever be a part of who he is and and his relationship with you. And I ask that you keep him safe and help him to learn and have fun.
And God, I thank you for McLean as well and the things that you have planned for him and the things that you've built into him already that you're bringing to fruition, the things that you're building up in him and the maturity you've brought him to as well. And I thank you for the route in front of him. Guide him in it, Lord, and I pray that you would give him peace and ease as he goes along that route, and that you would give him great friends and relationships ahead of him, and that you would fill him up with knowledge, but also with your love for other people, and with your ability and gifting to reach out to those around him, to benefit the church and those around. God, I thank you for him. I thank you for what you brought him through and the time we've had together in this youth setting. We pray this in your name, Jesus. Amen. All right. Thank you, guys. Round of applause for our guests.
McLean, just thinking you're going to like the scene of every like James Bond movie, right? Where this is the henchman's headquarters. So yeah, just all the best there. I hope you learn positive things and have fun.
We'll remove these chairs. I'm going to invite the worship team back up. We're going to carry on with our morning.
We're going to start by singing this song together called Joy of the Lord, and we've done this one a few times. I appreciate, Colin, when you lead this one. So maybe this will be a good one for McLean, too. You know, as you head out from here, there will be some tough things, there will be some great things, and no matter where you go or what happens, the joy of the Lord will be your strength. So let's stand and sing this together. Though the tears may fall, my song will rise to you. Though my heart may fail, my song will rise to you. While there's breath in my lungs, I will praise you, Lord. In the dead of night, I lift my eyes to you. When the waters rise, I lift my eyes to you. While there's hope in this heart, I will praise you, Lord. The joy of the Lord is my strength. invite everybody to just read the words on the screen out loud together. These are words from Colossians chapter 1, and we're just going to pray them together. Lord, I pray today that I will be strengthened with all your glorious power, so I will have all the endurance and patience I need. May I be filled with joy, always thanking you, God, my Father. You have enabled me to share in the inheritance that belongs to your people who live in the light. For you have rescued me from the kingdom of darkness and transferred me into the kingdom of your dear Son, who purchased my freedom and forgave my sins. I was once far away from you, God. I was your enemy, separated from you by my evil thoughts and actions. Yet now you have reconciled me to yourself through the death of Christ in his physical body. As a result, you have brought me into your own presence, and I am holy and blameless as I stand before you without a single fault. Lord, help me continue to believe this truth and stand firmly in it. In Christ alone, my hope is found. He is my light, my strength, my song. This cornerstone, this solid ground, firm through the fiercest drought and storm. What heights of love, what depths of peace, when fears are stilled, when striving cease, my comforter, my all in all. Here in the love of Christ I stand. In Christ alone, who took on flesh, fullness of God in helpless faith, his gift of love and righteousness, scorned by the ones he came to save, till on that cross as Jesus died, the wrath of God was satisfied, for every sin on him was laid. Here in the death of Christ I live. There in the ground his body lay, light of the world, my darkness slain, and bursting forth in glorious day, up from the grave he rose again, and as he stands in victory, sin's curse has lost its grip on me, for I am his. There's nothing worth more that will ever come close. Nothing can compare. You're our living hope. Your presence, Lord. I've tasted and seen of the sweetest of loves, where my heart becomes free and my shame is undone. Your presence, Lord. Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for, to be overcome by your presence, Lord. Your presence, Lord. There's nothing worth more that will ever come close. Nothing can compare. You're our living hope. Your presence, Lord. Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for, to be overcome by your presence, Lord. Your presence, Lord. Let us become more aware of your presence. Let us experience the glory of your goodness. Let us become more aware of your presence. Let us experience the glory of your goodness. Let us become more aware of your presence. Let us experience the glory of your goodness. Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for, to be overcome by your presence, Lord. Amen. You can be seated.
Kind of just want to take a moment and sit in that for a bit. Thank you for leading us in worship. Our speaker, our preacher, presenter, our talker this morning is Noel Hudson, someone who many of you will know well. And Noel, that's kind of cool. And
Good one. Wow, you're on today.
and some that might not be familiar with. So this mark right here in the
I was
middle
gonna
of the
talk
aisle,
about
yeah,
that. Yes.
it's visible. This is Noel's mark.
100% me.
That he's responsible for impacting
Yeah.
not just the floor,
I
but
know. When you and Colin were talking about like forgetting Alex, you fixed that, right? And you're playing with bow and arrows in here, but it's totally safe, no damage.
there's a mark. I know where it is.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I have known about that mark for like 17 years. And then there was also one up on the mezzanine that was me chasing youth one night, like at, Dock 68 now. I was chasing someone in my wool socks. And I was like, I'm going to do this epic power slide and catch this kid in my socks. And I slid, and my feet kicked out. I landed on my tailbone and slid so hard into the wall, I kicked a hole in the wall, right? And it was fixed, like patched for, I say, like 8 years. And I would go and look up there all the time, like, oh, yep, that was me.
That's great, though. Buildings can be repaired, and the memories
Yep.
that come with them are worth it. So that's fantastic. Can I pray for you? And
Yes,
then
please.
you've got the next
Thank you.
piece for us. So, Heavenly Father, I thank you for Noel. I thank you that he can be with us here this morning and that you've laid a message on his heart. I pray, God, that you would bring that message through him clearly, that would be what we hear, would be your voice even more than Noel's voice. And I pray, God, for as we listen, as we engage with the message you're bringing, God, that you would open our hearts and minds to what it is you want us to see this morning as well. We pray this in your name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you, that helps. I have to be fully honest and transparent. My brain is going like 10,000 miles a minute right now, which, kind of full disclosure, like I'm comfortable up here. I mean, I've preached a lot of times. I do business presentations all the time. So this I'm comfortable with. But just so you know, and I learned this, Mom and Dad, I learned this from Herb Kopp years ago. I know the name Herb Kopp. He was conference pastor for the MB conference for a long time, mostly when I was a teenager and young adult. And I remember Herb, and I, in some ways, kind of idolized him. And when I knew I wanted to kind of get into full-time ministry, I was watching. All right, test, 1, 2. All right, good job, Brendan. Thank you very much. Now, what was I saying? Oh, yes, I've been doing this a long time. And what I learned from Herb Kopp all those years ago when I was studying him, this man was like a career pastor. And I was going to the McIver MB Church, is where I grew up. I distinctly remember, this has got to be 30 years ago. And he was like this legend, this icon to me. And I remember him getting up to preach. And he's at the pulpit, and he gets his papers, and he's about to pray, and his hands are shaking. And I was like, no way. He's nervous. And that stuck with me for a long time. So today, I have a bunch of things I want to do. I'm going to try and stay mostly linear, but if you know me, there's going to be a bunch of tangents. So the full disclaimer. The other disclaimer is, I feel like my perception is when you have preachers, talkers, whatever label you want to give. Scott, I really like talker. That's a new one. I'm going to go with that. So we have a talker here. I feel like the talker is mostly going to talk to adults. I specifically tried to gear today for you guys in the back. This is going to be hopefully fun and engaging and interesting. And if it's great for you and not as much for everybody else, for one Sunday, I think that's okay. But hopefully there's something here for everybody. Anyway, what I wanted to tell you is, especially you guys, when you have to do presentations in class, you are going to be nervous every time. That never goes away. What you do get better at, the more you practice, is learning to control it and get better at it. And you're only going to get better at it by just doing it again and again and again. But the nerves inside are always here. Right now, my core of my body is on fire and my hands are freezing cold. And I know that because it happens every single time. You just get used to it. So is that good food for thought? Awesome. Okay. Other random thoughts I have to get out of the way to calm my mind down. Scott, between two ferns, you, Jason, and myself. That could be interesting. That could be very fun with the three of us talking together. So there's that. And McLean, where's McLean? There you are. One serious and one jokey one. Which one do you want first, serious or jokey? Jokey. I also worked on my car this week. So we're the same, because you know my car, right? I changed the air filter and my washer fluid. So, we're the same, 100%. Right. So I feel good about that. Okay, and the serious one, I'm friends with your parents. I also feel like I'm friends with you, which is pretty cool. And you, my friend, you have had a tough class. And Melanie and I have talked about that for years. You have had a tough class. And to see you be here today, ooh, I'm getting a little emotional. To see you here today, I agree with what you said, that you have lived a good life of faith in a class that is not supportive that way. And so I'm proud of you, man. Yeah, thanks. Okay, now, with my friend Carolyn, let's have slide number 1. All right, perfect. So we're going to try today to talk about Jesus' encouragement or invitation to follow him. That's going to be our linear path with a couple of tangents and divergence here. So the idea is I'm going to present some of this. I really hope it does not come off as a business presentation or lecture, because that would be bad. I'm not necessarily aiming to tell you what to think or believe. What I really actually want to do today is I want to throw a pile of questions at you to get you think. And I think the best thing that can happen today is when you leave from here and you go have lunch with friends or family, you actually talk about this. To me, that's the best thing, the best outcome that can come from today. So hopefully I stir your mind, your curiosity, and challenge some assumptions. So I'm going to try and make a bunch of observations today, and if we can spur some dialogue and discussion after, I think that's great. So we've got on screen, and this is the first tangent here, I have a few slides today that I'm like, ooh, do I put this in? Do I not put this in? And we're going to find out right away if my girls were right and this is going to bomb. So next slide, please. Come follow me, which we know was the quote from Jesus. Next slide. And also Michael Scott. Oh, we do have Office fans. Oh, I was thinking this was going to bomb hard. Oh, you've made me so happy. Oh, thank you. Okay. All right. Okay, serious now. Let's go to the next slide. When I was prepping for this, Ken Fraze invited me probably 6 to 8 weeks ago. And, students, when you get this writing assignment or presentation from your teacher, and your teacher thinks they're doing you a favor saying you can write or talk about anything, that's the worst, right? Give me a topic. Give me something to research and study. And so Ken gave this to me, and I'm like, I don't know what to talk about. I had 7 different ideas, and I ran with a couple of them. My favorite idea, I kid you not, I wanted to figure out a stand-up comedy routine that I would be doing bits up here the whole time. And I thought that long and hard for a solid week until I realized, I don't know how to do that, and I can't pull it off. So what I came up with today actually has sort of come in bits and spurts, either when I couldn't sleep or actually when I was in church a few weeks ago. We were singing songs, and all of a sudden, in the middle of a song, and I realized what this looked like to my family, I dropped down in the middle of a song, and I got at my phone. I was just typing notes on my phone furiously. And I had to, I could see, I think it was Melanie on this side and Emma on this side, and I had to kind of whisper to them, everything's okay, I just have sermon ideas. And then they knew to leave me alone. So this is what today is. So the encouragement or the invitation, what does it mean to follow Jesus? What does it mean to follow Jesus? Because I think when I ask that question, we're going to instantly do what we should be doing, is we're going to look at that question as North American Christians in the year 2023. We are going to see this far differently than if you were a Middle Eastern person 2,000 years ago, right? Our circumstances could not be further apart. So let's look at this. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, so my inspiration came from Matthew chapter 4, 18 to 22. This is what we would just term, or maybe our Bible has the title in there, the call to follow Jesus. So we'll read this out here together. As Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw 2 brothers, Simon, called Peter, and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. "Come, follow me," Jesus said, "and I will send you out to fish for people." At once they left their nets and followed him. To me, that is the most significant sentence in this section here. At once they left their nets and followed him. We don't live that way in any way, do we? Where we drop everything to follow someone or something? Let's carry on here. Going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. They were in a boat with their father Zebedee, preparing their nets. Jesus called them, and immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. Really interesting note here that there was that extra bit in there, that extra detail, that they not only left their nets, they left their occupation, they left their way of life, and they left their father, right? They're leaving their family behind. They're leaving their nuclear unit, which I think, as much as we love and value families, and I would vouch for us in this community, we do love and value families. And as much as we love and value families, for the Middle Eastern people that I have known, they love and value their family like twice as much as we do, which might be hard to imagine, but that's been my experience. And so the fact that they left their occupation, they left their known day-to-day life, they left their father behind is truly significant. Next slide, please. What I really wanted to, do you know what I wanted to put here instead of charisma? Yeah, I really wanted to put Jesus had riz. Have you heard that term? I have realized I am now old enough that my kids come home with slang and lingo I do not know. And it's hit me hard just in the last couple of years. So my kids, especially Jedi over in the corner there, he comes home and he's like talking, "Oh, so-and-so has riz." I'm like, "What is riz? How do you spell that?" They can't spell it for me. Can you spell it? Oh, you do know how to spell it. I really wanted to put on here, Jesus had riz. Now, the way riz is told to me from our kids, it's the R-I-S in charisma, meaning someone has charisma. And I didn't put that up here because I'm like, it was Friday night or Saturday morning. I was like, I better go online to Urban Dictionary just to see what this actually means. I'm not putting it up there. The way you guys use it is not the way the Urban Dictionary defines it. And I can't say that about Jesus. Okay? So you can go look it up if you want, but I'm not putting that on my slide. But I really like the idea, though, the way you kids use it, that Jesus knew how to draw people, right? Like, I really want to emphasize that, when Jesus is looking at these four men, and all he has to say is, "Come, follow me," that they actually felt drawn to him so much that they dropped their phones. They dropped their nets. They dropped everything. They dropped their way of life because he was that compelling that they're like, "What I'm doing now doesn't matter. I need to go and follow this man." That's like, we really need to let that sink in because, or at least as much as we can, because I don't know, and I include myself, I don't know that we can fully appreciate what that actually means, because that's not how we think. That's not how we live. Do we drop anything for everybody? Actually, random thought, we do, because my kids are in Minneapolis now because they dropped everything to go see Taylor Swift. Good and bad for Sunday morning, right? So maybe we just need to reevaluate what we do, what we can and do, drop everything for. Next slide here, please. Good, that's perfect. So here's the thing with what the disciples ended up doing. So they dropped everything. They dropped their way of life, okay? So they gave up on their income, their livelihood. They gave up kind of on their family because families lived really tight together. They lived so tight together that oftentimes they would be living together, like multiple generations in the same home. Or if they were going to build a new home, they would actually take the existing house and build 3 walls on the outside of it, so there'd be shared walls and shared space. So families were tight, okay? All of you my age, can you imagine living with your parents all the time? And then your kids are going to live with all of you? That's common. And it's common still in Middle Eastern cultures, okay, which we often like to tease certain ethnic groups of living that way in Canada. But that's how a lot of the world lives. Tight together. So if you're that tight with your family and Jesus comes along and you give up on all of them to wander through the desert for 3+ years with Jesus, that's a really big decision. And here's the thing, what it ended up being, it was a significant decision that as these disciples followed Jesus day after day after day, they not only became tighter and closer knit together, they saw who Jesus was, they saw how he lived, they understood he was the Messiah, the anointed one, the chosen one, the Son of God. And it came to be in the end that after Jesus' death and resurrection, these disciples went and were telling everyone about Jesus. Not because it was easy, not because it was convenient. It was a daily choice. And for a lot of them, it cost them their life. This choice to follow Jesus ended up, let me check my notes here. They had to get to the point where they realized this is going to cost me on a daily basis. Now, can you go to the next slide here? I don't know if you heard of the Babylon Bee. Oh, I like the nod. Thanks, Jason. The Babylon Bee. This is online satire, very much from a conservative perspective, but they have a fairly strong religious component on there, and it's evangelical Christian. I was listening to some of their stuff recently. It was, I think, within the last 10 days, and there was an interview they had with an author and podcaster by the name of Frank Turek, and lo and behold, they were talking about the disciples' choice to follow Jesus. And Frank, being a bit of an apologist, he made two really interesting points. Because one of the criticisms of the resurrection story was that the whole thing was fabricated and made up by Jesus' disciples. And this author, Frank Turek, was saying, okay, here's the thing. If the disciples actually did make up that entire story, inevitably, one or more of them would probably have broken and told the truth that it was a fabrication, that it simply never happened. It's almost logically impossible that you could have that group of people that could tell the same story consistently over the course of the next 10, 20, 30 years. Someone would have broken and fessed up, okay? Probably would have been me out of that group. I can't take it anymore, right? Or, here's the other thing to consider. If they were professing that Jesus is Lord and that Jesus did rise from the grave, if you follow the life of most of the disciples, since most of them were jailed, persecuted, tortured, and some even executed for their faith in Jesus, it's unlikely they would have allowed themselves to be subjected to these type of circumstances if the resurrection and the life of Jesus wasn't true. So their decision to follow Jesus, they were willing to take that to the end of their life, suffering torture, imprisonment, and even death. The call to following Jesus, this was like a significant choice for them that they put their life up for. And just for a little bit of levity here in the moment, it made me think of Lord of the Rings, and some of you know how much I love Lord of the Rings. Next slide, please. This is Gimli, and if you know the scene in Return of the King, it's a little comedic moment when things are dour and heavy. They're about to march into Mordor, and Gimli is sitting there smoking his pipe saying, "Certainty of death, small chance of success, what are we waiting for?" This is what the disciples lived. This is what they lived, and I know it's kind of funny, but this is what they lived. They didn't know that their chances were great. They knew they were walking into difficult circumstances, and they basically lived saying, what are we waiting for? And I think this was the life in the world that these first disciples had to deal with, and many died for their faith. This is something, my friends, I don't know. I don't know. Like you, McLean, I'm super fortunate. I'm raised in a family of Christians with extended family that are Christians. And I grew up in a community. I grew up in like a super Mennonite community in Winnipeg. Everyone I knew was Christian. Well, I shouldn't say everyone. Most everyone who knew was Christian. I went to a Christian high school. I went to Bible school. I've lived in Elm Creek almost 20 years now. It's like almost half my life in a very strong Christian community with a lot of strong Christian friends. From a faith perspective, my life has been nothing short of easy. So this call to follow Jesus, I don't understand it the way the disciples did. So as I read this, as I feel drawn to this passage, I just keep asking myself, like, what does this actually mean? Because I'm not a first century Hebrew, right? My job is relatively easy. There's stresses, right? But fishing is hard. You know, when you're just casting nets and you're literally living day to day to day. No savings account, no extra income coming your way, right? So they're living day to day. They were living in they had occupiers in the Roman Empire living in their land with threats from them coming all the time, trying to, if not eradicate, subdue their culture. That's not our experience at all. So this what I have found in my life growing up in this Christian lineage is we more focus on sort of the intellectual faith choice of believing in Jesus, right? So you ever think about that? We were pushed and called to believe in Jesus. But Jesus didn't necessarily call people to believe in him. He called them to follow them. It's like this ongoing, step-by-step daily obedience. If you think of that Eugene Peterson book, is it Eugene Peterson? Long Obedience in the Same Direction? That's the call of the disciples. But I think we as North American Christians, we sort of almost downplay it as make the sort of the inner logical choice of believing in Jesus, and things will kind of work out. Not the experience of the disciples. So we can go to the next slide here. My question for us today, the disciples had to leave quite a bit behind in following Jesus. When we believe in Jesus, there's generally not anything we need to leave behind, is there? None of you are called to leave your occupation. None of you are called to leave your family. None of you are called to leave your community in following Jesus because of the peace and prosperity we have in our land. But are there things that are maybe not so obvious? Things hidden, deep, buried? Are there things that we need to follow, leave behind to follow Jesus? This leads me to a story. Can we go to the next slide? I don't know if you know this. One more. There we go. In 2002, there was a young married couple who had been married for a couple of years named Noel and Melanie Hudson, and they joined a missions trip to Kosovo. This is kind of in the former Yugoslavia. This is when, before we ever moved here, before we had kids even, we joined in some missionaries, Ernie and Susie Penner, and we went to Kosovo. Now, you guys are way too young because this is before you were born, but in 1999, there was a big ethnic war in Kosovo in the former Yugoslavia, and we went into that war zone after the fact. As we were there, we got to meet a whole bunch of people. So this is kind of just a zoom-in map so you can see the area. McLean, Austria, is up to the left. Nowhere near. 6 hours away, just so you know. So you can see in the brown, red, I'm feeling very male right now, the dark center, you can see Serbia. At the bottom of it is this province called Kosovo, and the star there is the capital, Pristina. So Kosovo in this map here, they declared independence from Serbia, I believe in 2008. To this day, the UN recognizes Kosovo as a country. I'm not sure Serbia does. Now, that map of Kosovo, you need to know Kosovo itself fits within southern Manitoba. And when we were there, we learned from locals that every year high school students get to go on buses and they do like a driving tour of the country in 3 hours. So it's a very small little area. For context, so up to the left, you see Bosnia, Montenegro, Croatia, and then there's a strip there along the Adriatic Sea. That's the former Yugoslavia area, where in the late 90s, there was tons of ethnic cleansing and ethnic war. This affected the Serbia, Kosovo, Albania region in this way. Serbia is strongly Serbian Orthodox Christian. Albania and Macedonia to the south are strongly conservative Muslim. And there you have little Kosovo sandwiched in between. Half of Kosovo is Serbian Christian and half of Kosovo is conservative Muslim. So we go in there. Let's go to the next slide. We're working with missionaries there. We flew into the capital, Pristina, so if you can see the star there. We journeyed up and left to the town of Vuštri. That's where we lived and stayed with the missionaries. And then up and left there is Mitrovica. It's about the distance from Elm Creek to Carmen. Okay? We would drive from Vuštri to Mitrovica each day. We helped build a house. And the house we helped build was for a Muslim family who lost their father and brothers in the war. And the war was this. The Serbian Christians tried to eradicate the Muslims, and they gathered them all in squares and tried to off them. And it was the Serbian Christians who were the aggressors. So when we went there, we were told we could bring our Bibles, but we couldn't flash them around. If you had any Christian jewelry, like crosses on chains, anything like that, we know what that means to us, right? Here's the tragedy. If you wore a cross on a chain around your neck and it popped out of your shirt, and an Albanian Muslim saw that, it was a declaration of war. So imagine walking into that thinking, I know nothing. I know nothing. This is a world apart from how I've been raised. Okay? So we got to work with Muslim builders who understood the wider context and wanted to work with the Christian missionaries. And it was just this unbelievable partnership between Christians and Muslims. So I got to work with these Muslim men day after day, building this house for this young family who had no father and no home. And we didn't get to see them move in, but on our last day before we had to fly home, the house was done. And I think the family moved in a day or two after. Anyway, while we were there, we stayed in Voucherie and we went to Mitrovica for work, but we also went to Mitrovica for church. And this is the point of my story. I don't have a picture of this guy because this is 2002, so iPhone wasn't invented yet. Neither was Google, and the internet was very small. So I have no digital pictures to show you. But we were at church that day, and this is literally 21 years ago. I can see this guy in my mind, clear as day. I don't remember his name, which is unfortunate. I'm going to call him Bislim, because that was a common name, Bislim. So Bislim stood up in front of us and gave his testimony in church that day. Bislim had a very, very similar choice to the disciples in Jesus' day. See, Bislim was born into a Muslim family, and he was raised Muslim. And the missionaries there in the local church, they befriended him. He would have been a similar age to us, maybe a little younger. I'm going to say he was like 18 to 20. I couldn't quite tell. Even though he was Muslim and in a Muslim family, he didn't look darker skinned. He didn't look Middle Eastern. He looked Western European through and through. Caucasian, bright blonde hair. Okay? You would not guess this guy was Muslim at all. And he's talking to us, and I'm feeling connections to this very passage. Because as he's telling his story, he's talking about how the people in the church had befriended him, had told him about Jesus, and something in his heart just caught. And he spent more and more time. He got his own Bible. He had to hide it from his family. And he got to the point where he didn't just decide to believe in Jesus. He made the statement that he was ready to follow Jesus. And he did it secretly for a number of months because he didn't know how his family would react. And the day he ended up telling his family that he was a follower of Jesus was the last day he was in his home. And he was instantly kicked out. He was excommunicated from his family, severed from all contact, severed from all relationship. It's like he was dead to his family. And what you need to know, like in the Muslim areas, whether it's in Africa or the Middle East or even Eastern Europe, family is everything. Like even more than what it is for us, family is everything. So this was a significant decision from his family. This was a significant decision for Bislim, that the call to follow Jesus was so strong and so real for him that he knew the repercussions, and he chose to follow Jesus anyway, because in his heart, in his mind, he knew it was the right thing to do. And that stuck with me to this day. And the question I have for myself, and I can't remember if I have a slide for this, Carolyn, or not, but like, have I really ever needed to give up much to follow Jesus? And I can't speak for you, but I know I can speak for me. I haven't. So is there something that you, as an individual, is there something that you need to leave behind to follow Jesus? If you don't need to have the threat or fear of your family or your job or anything like, is there something day to day that you need to leave behind? Some ideas. And a lot of these are just me speaking from personal experience, okay? And this is weird. This sort of, if you've read C.S. Lewis's The Screwtape Letters, this kind of is along those lines, where maybe the ploy of the devil is just to distract us and keep us medicated in different ways. So I have no threat to my physical life. I have no threat to my family or anything for me to follow Jesus. But are there distractions, are there things I need to leave behind, such as phone or screen time? I don't know if that hits you or not. That hits me in some ways. How about financial security? What about our home or our comforts? Everything we're being called to sort of let go or leave behind to further pursue and follow Jesus. Here's a tricky one. Years ago, I was at CMU, and I was in a room full of pastors and university professors. And there was an individual there that challenged the entire room about how we as leaders were following Jesus. And this one professor said to everyone, do we need to leave behind our preconceived ideas about the Bible in order to better follow Jesus? And I was like a young pastor at that time. I was like, who's going to answer this one? Because it was dead silent in that room. And what I took away from that is we as North Americans in the year 2000, we have our own preconceived notions of what we think the Bible should say. And if we're truly honest, I think what we want the Bible to say. And it's tough for us to kind of understand the context of what Jesus was trying to say in that day and age. So I think it's tough for us to do that. I could go on a big tangent there, but I'm not going to. What about, and this is going to apply to you guys, hands up, who's going to Calgary for the mission trip? Perfect. What about giving up the right to be right? Giving up the right to be right. I say this to you specifically because you and we saw Lloyd Lett come in this week, right? Lloyd is a dear friend of mine. When we as my family had the privilege to go down to Mexico for 5-6 weeks back in 2010-ish, I can't remember, it was a real long time ago. Lloyd led us on that trip, that whole experience. And so you got the privilege of meeting Lloyd the other night. And I remember in our preparations there, the call that was given to all of our teams. There was teams that went to Mexico, to Colombia, to Kenya, and to Japan. And a theme for all of us there was laying down our rights. Giving up, when you go on this trip, can you give up your comforts? Can you give up your right to be right? Can you give up your need to be seen and serve the group and serve the community as part of you following Jesus? Okay, that's tough. That's hard. But can you give up your right to be right? Can you give up your right to be seen and heard? Or even, and this may apply to things kind of storming in our community and in our school division right now, can we be careful how we speak out on certain topics? Can we be careful on what we choose to stand up for? Carolyn, do I have a slide on Matthew chapter 5 coming up next? I think I might have forgotten to put it in there. It's not there? Just in my mind? Perfect. I am getting old. Okay. All right. I want to read to you Matthew chapter 5 because this has been running through my head all week with some of the things being discussed in our division, in our community, our school division, in our community here. And I am a technology person, so I apologize. I got my Bible on my app here. In the very next chapter in Matthew, detailing the Sermon on the Mount, after Jesus preaches the Beatitudes, he says this to all his followers: "You are the light of the world. A town or a city built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." What I take from this, and you might read and understand something different, what I take from that is we are called to let our light shine, and I believe we are called to be examples of Jesus in this world, not to argue people into becoming followers of Jesus, but to show people what it's like to be a follower of Jesus. And in that, it's okay for us to have our opinions, but I really passionately believe that we as Christians need to tell the world what we are for, rather than going out into the world only telling the world what we are against. Because when we only tell people what we're against, no one is going to be drawn to Jesus. But when we tell people what we are for, when there's something to follow, something to chase, something to pursue, something to live for, that draws people in. Does that track with you guys? Does that make sense? Okay, awesome. Good. Let our light shine. Okay. Whew, look at the time. Let's go to the end. Okay. Number 3. All right, here's the thing. And I want to be very clear. I should have known Scott was going to be here, but I actually didn't double check. And I didn't know Jason was going to be here either. This I wanted an independent thought. You are at a crossroads right now. McLean is graduating. You're moving on to something different. Okay? You as a church, let's say you're graduating. You're moving on to something different. Is there something that you, as a body of believers, need to leave behind as you follow and pursue Jesus? Okay? You've got a new chapter unfolding in you, and I feel very good and consistent. I think I said the same thing before Jason came. Okay? And it's pretty cool to be able to say this now. you've got a new leader coming in. And he doesn't know I'm saying this, so I think it's good. So it's okay. You've got a new leader coming in. Or in this case, you have a leader that you know or think you know in a new position. And you're going to get to see new aspects of Scott, right? You're going to get to see him in a new role, in a new way, with some new authority and a new leadership role in here. Can you, as a body of believers, can you be open to trying something new and different as you collectively seek to follow Jesus in this community? Are there any comforts that you may need to leave behind as you seek to be faithful as a church? And I would just say this, please allow him, and even the new youth pastor, male or female that you hire, please allow them to lead with their gifts and their abilities, and do not push them to lead a certain way. Okay? Let Scott play to his strengths, just as Jason did, and surround him with people that are here to assist him in his weaknesses. This means that the next chapter of this church is going to look and feel a little bit different. And I wish my girls were here because they've heard me say this for years. One thing I tell my family repeatedly is that even though something might be different, it doesn't mean that it's wrong. Okay? There's a new chapter unfolding in here. So, as you seek to collectively follow Jesus, this next chapter is going to feel similar, but it's going to feel different, and that's okay. Can you be open to following the Spirit of God in new and different ways, to try something creative, to let him play to his strengths, just as you did with Jason before him and other leaders here? So the final thought I just really want to leave you with is, what does it mean for you as the individual, and what does it mean for you as the church? What does it mean for you to follow Jesus in this day and age? I don't know how to do this anymore. I'm done. Do I invite the worship team forward? This amount of practice on. Okay, thanks.
We're just going to close with a song that is a benediction. And I think as we all go home and think about what Noel has spoken to us about today, the best thing is that even as you may feel challenged, or you may feel like there's some changes or some things that you're being asked to leave behind, God is with you. So I don't know if you know this song. We have sung it here once with Pembina Valley Bible Camp. So I invite you to stand. If you haven't heard it before, we're actually just going to sing one little piece of it. We're going to repeat it a few times, so I think you'll get the hang of it, and you can sing with us.
The Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace.
We'll sing that part again.
The Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace.
Great choice. Wonderful choice. Those words we sang are from the priestly blessing that God said to Moses. Speak these to the people. These words have been spoken as a blessing over people for probably 5,000 years. Let that sink in. 5,000 years. These words of God spoken over people. I take great comfort in that. Comes from Numbers chapter 6. Colin, maybe you read it recently. The Lord said to Moses, tell Aaron and his sons, this is how you are to bless the Israelites. And today we will say, this is how you are to bless the people of Elm Creek. Say to them, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. This day and all the days to come as you follow Jesus. Amen.